What's up, everybody? So, I want to start off with a disclaimer. I am a Grey Knights fan. I do thoroughly enjoy the Grey Knights chapter. They are a cool chapter, highly secretive, super specialized. All Psychers incorruptible. Their lore, their origin, their unique genetic heritage, their capabilities, war gear, everything else, the whole shebang. I do enjoy the Grey Knights. And I say that because this thought exercise that will be this long winded ramble isn't based upon trying to shift what they are to make them likable for myself or anything like that, nor is it about quote unquote fixing anything. Um, it's more so about freeing this faction up a bit for GW to be able to handle this faction and not feel like they have to somewhat neglect them until their plans come to a certain point. And I got to thinking about this because of 8th edition. Um, Primaris. I like Primaris. But it was very clear that Primaris weren't really going to be a thing for Grey Knights in the beginning. As Primaris stuff evolved over time, it also became clear this is the path GW is going, and we expected this from the beginning, but this is the way, you could say, for Astartes, that over time, if we were able to go forward in time, we would see a codex eventually happen that is nothing but Primaris Space Marine units. And I don't think that means what we know as Space Marine units are going to go away, um, you know, 100% either. So that's another ramble for another time. My point is, um, I do think that with this being the strategy that GW has in place for us in the Imperium's Astartes, that it will also impact the Grey Knights. But I think either right now, GW isn't 100% sold on themselves for what they want to do with the Grey Knights, Primaris wise, or more than likely, they're not ready to unveil it yet. I feel like they would want to wait, it seems anyway, for the Primaris evolution to be further along in its paces before doing stuff for the Grey Knights. As an outsider looking in, those are kind of the two options I see happening right now. We'll see what happens with their ninth edition codex, though I think it's going to be more of the same, which is going to really leave them feeling a little neglected for sure for a lot more people in the community. Um, and I have no problem with them going Primaris, but they definitely need some form of unique Primaris unit. I would not be that pleased for them just being thrown a bone and being given something that is turned into a Psyker unit, because all Grey Knights are Psychers, and given Nemesis force weapon equivalents of whatever power weapon they have, right? Case in point, Blade Guard Veteran. You could throw that into a Grey Knights force with the ninth edition codex, or it's not us, we can't. GW could throw it into the ninth edition codex and state that their swords and Nemesis force swords with storm shields and their Psychers, and it would kind of sort of work, but it would be kind of a little lackluster, dare I say it, a little disappointing. But, anyways, tangent. So, if Primaris is the strategy, as it definitely seems to be for the future of Astarte stuff going forward over time, then how can we not have Grey Knights feel like they're being pushed into a corner waiting for the time to shine in that concept? Well, that's where this reforging thought exercise comes into play. Because the idea is to keep the vast majority of Grey Knight stuff pretty much what we know, right? Meaning the data sheets pretty much as we know them, and the lore, for the most part, as we know it. Instead, this is reforging faction keyword. Instead of them being Adeptus Astartes faction keyword, we would take their chapter keyword, Grey Knight, and we would make that their faction keyword. We would remove the Adeptus Astartes faction keyword from the Grey Knights. This has ramifications and implications and whatever else. And yes, this would definitely never happen because it would be quite the retcon to pull off in modern 40k. It would be the biggest retcon they would need to pull off, and it would definitely ruffle, I think, too many feathers and people would just be displeased. I think mostly for the sake of being displeased, just because it's change and it's massive change at that. So, very much doubt this would ever happen. But that's what this thought exercise ramble is for. So, of course, share your thoughts in the comment section below once the video is done. So, it's not just faction keyword, and we can wrap it up. That also means, and they shall know no fear will no longer be applicable to Grey Knights. That's really a Space Marine thing. It would also mean 3 units that they have which share unit entry type outside of, being a Psyker and whatnot for 2 of them, with regular Space Marine Codex, the Tech Marine, the Chaplain, and the Librarian would either have to be reworked a bit so we can rename them and have them feel different but in the same spirit of what they're about, or get rid of them. And that's just up in the air, whatever. But outside of that, and of course outside of what GW would do to the Grey Knights, which who knows if they had this capability going on, what we fundamentally know about all of the unit entries and their war gear and the lore is going to remain the same. Fundamentally. What I mean by that is, more than likely, if this was to happen, that means GW is definitely going to tamper with the stat line in some way, for sure, to further differentiate them. And I'm fine with that. But that's not what I'm here to ramble about. That is way beyond the scope of reforging this, because that is implying that it would ever happen, in essence. Really, the one other thing that really gets changed, and that I will really go a bit more in depth on, is in their fluff. Because if you're a Space Marine, you have Gene Seed. So if you're not a Space Marine, you don't have Gene Seed. If we're not making them a Space Marine faction anymore, hence removing Adeptus Astartes faction keywords so they would no longer be Space Marines, that means they no longer have Gene Seed. And nothing wrong with that, but it definitely is something to keep in mind. Particularly in how we can explain that away, which I will be doing here in this ramble. But with that said, nothing else really needs to be worried about. The war gear for the Grey Knights works. Doesn't need to be changed. Stormbolters are seen in a variety of places within the Imperium, so that's not a big deal. Nemesis Force weaponry is their own thing. When you look at, power armor, Terminator armor, dreadnoughts, and Land Raiders, yeah, that's Space Marine stuff too. But we also see power armored stuff in the form of the Sisters of Battle, and we see Terminator armor, dreadnoughts, and Land Raiders in the form of the Custodes. So there's precedence already set for a force of the Imperium having gear that you could draw parallels to another faction, namely the Space Marines in this particular instance. What's more with that is that the Grey Knights lore already has built within it the explanation for why they have this stuff, fluff-wise, and also rules-wise. They have this armor, and it's known as the Aegis armor. Their power armor and Terminator armor and all that jazz is Aegis armor. It's unique to the Grey Knights. No other faction has it. It's, psychic lattice work in there for psychic defense and what have you. The point is that it's aesthetically specific looking. It's Grey Knights are very easy to spot in their war gear loadout, and their armor even is a bit different looking. It's already got a name, and it's already set up as being something wholly and uniquely theirs. So we already have justification with the established fluff and lore for them. So that's pretty cool. Really, all we need to do now is add to their origin story to make this be a fitting thing to remove the Gene Seed, and thus have them still be transhuman super soldiers, but genetically enhanced another way. And let's go over that now. So, the origin of the Grey Knights, if you don't know, is that Malcador the Sigillate gathered 8 Astartes from different legions during the flames of the Horus Heresy, from both loyal and traitor. Obviously, they're all loyal to the Emperor, so there's particular choices that he made. These 8 were gathered before the Emperor to be instructed on what they are to do. And they were to go to Titan, which they did. This happened before the Siege of Terra. So they went to Titan. Titan got hidden away. And on Titan, they founded the Grey Knights chapter. That's how it is. Well, since they are no longer going to be Astartes in this thought experiment. We'll just call it the Grey Knight Founding. They're not going to be a chapter since they're not Space Marines in this instance. But this more or less is the same. What I just said will still happen. However, we're adding to that. And what I'm adding to it is A, the reasoning and explanation for why they don't have Gene Seed, and therefore why we can take away the Adeptus Astartes keyword in this thought experiment. By the way, as you can tell by the title, this is going to be long-winded, if you didn't know already. But anyways, and then B, I'm also adding a little bit extra spice in there to kind of reorchestrate this and have it, in my opinion, make a bit more sense if it was to go down this road. Because the thing about the Grey Knights is, as a Space Marine chapter, they are the Chamber Militant of the Ordo Malleus. Well, what we're doing is going to be enhancing them a little bit, enhancing their fluff a bit, and having them be a bit closer or truer to how GW has explained the Grey Knights for so long. And as a result, I feel like if you are making something that is actually considered to be above Space Marine capability, which we are doing in this instance for this thought experiment, and it'll make sense as we go on, then we would have to tweak that, and they would no longer be directly the Chamber Militant of the Ordo Malleus, but still work with them. Kind of like Ordo Hereticus and the Ecclesiarchy with the Sisters of the Battle. So let's just get into it, and hopefully it'll make sense as I go. So the Emperor will meet with the 8, but alongside the 8, the Emperor will have his own 8 hand-picked Custodes. And these Custodes will accompany the 8 Astartes to Titan for the creation of the Grey Knight Founding. And the Emperor will state that while the Astartes will be the ones chiefly responsible for getting the founding started on the Grey Knights, it is the Custodes that will be in direct command and control of this founding force. The Grey Knights shall be a living weapon of their armory, a tool in their arsenal to wield as they see fit, and when they aren't directly commanding them to do things, go places, or assist, they shall act as a semi-autonomous force against the threat of the warp, and so on. Okay, so Custodes are in control. So why have the 8? Well, as he said, the Astartes shall be in charge of actually getting the founding started. It's the Custodes have direct command over all of this. This is because Space Marines are a more traditional style of military force, where Custodes are not. So it makes sense to have the best standing standard type of military force in the Imperium, the Astartes, the ones to do the founding and the training up. Also, the Custodes don't have the bonds of brotherhood like Astartes do. It is a great strength of the Astartes. And it will be crucial for the Grey Knights to have a deep brotherhood bond with themselves, with each other amongst their force, to overcome the dire threat that is chaos and the warp. So who better to help instill that ideology than those 8 Astartes, who will be forging their own bonds of brotherhood with themselves and with those that they're helping to found and really get that ball rolling. But that won't be enough, and that is why the Grey Knights are all Psykers, as they are in the actual lore. And to further enhance this, the Emperor is leaving nothing to chance, and just like in the real lore, their genetic heritage will come directly from the Emperor. That's right, if you didn't know, the Grey Knight's gene seed in the actual lore of the Grey Knights is direct from the Emperor, distilled down from his own genome. No Primarch in the way. Which is really cool and really unique. And it is why the Grey Knights are incorruptible, you could say, and why they have their psychic might and what have you. And they're all Psykers to begin with, and this helps enhance all that. And that's really cool. Well, it'll be the same thing here, but instead of gene seed, the Emperor will make it clear that the Grey Knights will be utilizing his genetic heritage for their genetic legacy, we'll just call it, but it won't be gene seed. And this is because gene seed, for all of his strengths, does have drawbacks, just as the mighty Custodes, for all their strength, have drawbacks for how they are created as well. And instead, the Emperor is going to take what he's learned from the Astartes project, what he's learned with his Custodes project, and even what he has learned with his Thunder Warrior setup that he had as a temporary fix, and combined it all together for the creation of these Grey Knights. That doesn't mean they are 1/3 Thunder Warrior, 1/3 Astartes, 1/3 Custodes. Not at all. They are 100% Grey Knights. But lessons learned from all three instances will be involved in the genetic enhancement on a cellular level for the Grey Knights. And what chiefly will that means is, like Astartes, who utilize a child to grow into their super soldier body, the same thing will happen with the Grey Knights. Now with the Custodes, that's completely opposite. The Custodes are like zygote up creation. They are basically like test tube babies turned test tube warriors. If you know, kind of like if you know Battletech and all, the Trueborn of the clan, that's kind of like how we could view Custodes if you want to think about it in that capacity. A much more laborious, intensive process, but the results speak for themselves. They are much mightier, and more capable than Space Marines could ever be. There is a limit to Space Marines' achievements of what they can achieve as a singular Space Marine in terms of might and physical prowess and whatnot, and that limit is below what Custodes can achieve. It's theoretically also in pure physical might a little bit below Thunder Warrior. Not as big a gap, but still a little bit of a gap. The Thunder Warrior project, you could say, did not use Gene Seed and did not use a child. It used just a warrior and enhanced them. It was very much a temporary fix because they would degrade over time, and it wasn't a stable result, but they were strong for sure. And the lessons learned from that went on to help temper the ideas for the Astartes and what have you could say. Well, all those three lessons will come into the Grey Knights, resulting in the Grey Knights that will utilize a cellular, almost molecular level process like the Custodes. And keep in mind, we don't really know how Custodes are made. Just the scant few fluff we have implies that it's like cellular level, zygote up, test tube baby type of situation. So that process is much slower than Gene Seed. Gene Seed is actually very fast, which is kind of funny to say because it doesn't seem fast to us. But considering Custodes were the first creations of the Emperor, they only ever managed to be about 10,000-ish strong at the height of their size. The Dark Eagles Legion alone, by the time that they actually went out to conquer the solar system before moving on for the Great Crusade, already eclipsed that size. The entirety of all the known legions' strength at the onset of the Horus Heresy was 1 million plus. And they only got started midway through the Unification Wars. So definitely a faster process. And more assembly line mass producible process as well. So there are advantages for how the Astartes do things. And a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B with thoughts from column C are all going to come together to make the Grey Knights. So the Grey Knights shall use a child, a Psyker child in this case, because they all are Psykers. But the Grey Knights will not use Gene Seed. Instead, it'll be a bit more of a cellular level, a bit more of an in-depth, laborious process. Not quite as crazy laborious as Custodes, but definitely a more arduous task in terms of surgery and gene therapy and gene enhancement and what have you. But the results will be that the body is being tricked basically into thinking that what it's doing and growing in terms of becoming a genetically enhanced super soldier, maybe even getting extra organs in it, specific specialized organs for the Grey Knights if deemed necessary, for the whole project or the whole Grey Knight founding to happen. Whatever the case is, the body's going to think this is the natural way to do things. And that's why the Grey Knights are going to be done this way, because the Custodes body is basically engineered to do that, to grow into a Custodes. Thus, they're able to be truly mightier than the rest. The body is doing what it thinks it needs to do naturally. And I put it this way because gene seed and the organs grown from gene seed, no matter how pure it is still a foreign entity introduced to the human body to force it to become genetically enhanced super soldier transhuman status, right? It's forcing the body to do this, which is why sometimes the body breaks down and the young initiates die from it. It's not a safe process. It's not an exact science. Results do vary, right, amongst the Astartes, but it works well enough. The results speak for themselves, and it creates truly capable warriors. But it is forcing the body to go beyond its limits, and at the same time trying to not kill it, but you never know. Thus, we have the limitations of gene seed enhancement be what they are with how we see Astartes and why they are not as powerful as Custodes. So these Grey Knights instead will have this really in-depth gene enhancement going on a cellular level, not a gene seed organ implantation level. So it's all natural, quote unquote, to the body. It's all the body itself producing the hormones and the organs if necessary, and the enhanced musculature and skeletal nature and whatever else, and growing whatever extra, like I said, organs it is part of the plan and the process itself, as if it was always meant to do so. And this is the body being tricked from all of that really laborious gene enhancement therapy, surgery, etc. stuff. So a much more dangerous process at the start, resulting in a much purer, much more successful finish, you could say. And this will allow the plateau of potential to be above Astartes, but still not quite to the realm of Custodes. Basically, if it would be almost, not Venn diagram, that's not a good analogy, but it's not like where one ends, the other begins. So Astartes' peak plateau in this theoretical concept would be cutting somewhere into the Grey Knight concept here. And that Grey Knight concept will go above that and cut a little bit into where the Custodes capability is at. And the Custodes capability plateaus at a certain point above that, right? It's kind of like that, like a gradient. But it would basically bridge the gap between Astartes and Custodes, you could almost say. Not that it's a mile-wide gap either, but still, it would be a bridge between these two in that regard. I went over such a long tangent and deep dive that way because this is crucial for the Grey Knights in this thought exercise to be able to no longer need the faction keyword Adeptus Astartes. And in blending the two, you have a faster process than Custodes, but a slower process than Astartes. Thus, the Grey Knights could be right around the size that they're at now anyway, and it would make sense given the process. Perhaps, it's not something to get too hung up on in terms of their size, but especially considering if they don't need to worry about, and they never really had to worry about conforming to a certain size to begin with. But, yeah, this is how I would explain away the not using gene seed. Gene seed is integral. It's tied directly to Astartes. Nobody else does it. So, remove it because we want to remove the faction keyword Adeptus Astartes in this thought exercise. And the reason I added the Custodes in at the beginning of this lore rambling part of this long-winded exercise is because Custodes are in direct command of this. If you're making warriors psychers all trained to the nth degree in both martial and psyker training, enhanced to be even beyond Astartes' capability potentially, or Astartes' potential, I should say, and backed by the genetic legacy of the Emperor himself. In this instance, I feel like Custodes want to keep tabs on that, keep their eyes on it. So them being in direct command over it allows them to keep an eye on the Grey Knights. They don't trust them 100%, that's part of it, and also that's the Emperor's genetic legacy there. They're going to want to keep an eye on that too, I would think. Plus, it gives them that anti-warp tool that the Custodes don't truly have because they don't have psychers. as far as we know thus far, right? They don't have psychers. So aside from brute forcing it and using their own prowess and skill at arms to win the day, which they will do anyway, they now have an anti-warp tool in their arsenal in the form of the living weapons that are the Grey Knights. And the added benefit here is that the Grey Knights will definitely work alongside the Automalius still. Well, even though they won't be the fully integrated Chamber Militant like we know them to be now, they will function in a similar capacity to how sisters from the Ecclesiarchy function with the Ordo Hereticus, right? Work closely alongside them a lot of the time. Added benefit for Custodes, able to keep tabs on the Inquisition even better because of this. Remember, the Custodes keep tabs on everything. They trust nothing that isn't them. It's the nature of the business, basically. So they can keep tabs on the Grey Knights, they can keep tabs on the Inquisition better, and have a potent weapon to wield when as they see necessary. And that's all really we need to worry about changing. All that frees up the Grey Knight Codex to no longer be bound by whatever Space Marine plan GW has in mind. One thing GW doesn't really do is deviate from their plans. So Primaris definitely are a plan. Could definitely eventually fit in with the Grey Knights, but for now they're still in a corner, just sitting there biding their time. If we magically got Grey Knights to be, like I mentioned, just not have that faction keyword of a death to Star Chase anymore, they would lose and they should know no fear. They wouldn't have Gene Seed, and those three HQs I mentioned of the Chaplain, Tech Marine, and Librarian might go poof as well. Outside of that, everything else, datasheet wise, armor list wise, stays the same. Warrior stays the same. Everything's justified from already established fluff in there. And GW could mess with them as they desire without worrying about stepping on their own strategy for a faction that they're no longer a part of. So they can still do their Primaris evolution and have then the Grey Knights be this type of force. And it wouldn't make the Primaris evolution feel pointless because it's not a same type of standardized Astartes force. Because even when, the Grey Knights, even being Astartes as they are for realsies, are highly specialized and different anyway. So if they aren't Astartes and have a different stat line setup that GW would invariably mess with to help further differentiate them, it wouldn't make Space Marines feel pointless. Just like having Custodes didn't all of a sudden make Space Marines second rate and useless to use. Not at all. It's a whole different way of playing, just like the Grey Knights are a different way of playing. So that's why I think it could work out. You can have your cake and eat it too in this scenario. But that's just a thought experiment. It's just basically theorizing and spitballing, having fun with it. Of course, I by no means expect anything like this to ever happen for the Grey Knights. I think they'll firmly stay Space Marines. But it is funny to think about because for the longest time, I can remember GW, whenever they described the Grey Knights in an article or anything like that, always described them as being trained to an even higher caliber and equipped to an even higher caliber than that of their Space Marine brethren. Well, now we have that in this theoretical concept be able to be represented proper because they're no longer Astartes and therefore can be tweaked to represent that bit of fluff as the Grey Knights are described a lot of the time. And it still keeps in mind their equipment being second only to the Custodes still makes sense with the Custodes backing them, right? Anyways, thanks for sticking through this long-winded ramble. As the title suggested, it was definitely a long-winded ramble. This little long-winded thought exercise on reforging the Grey Knights. At the end of the day, the Grey Knights, from just what I've mentioned, would be 100% familiar to everybody. The lore hasn't changed, aside from being added to explain away why they wouldn't have Gene Seed. And their data sheets really would feel quite familiar for sure. And model-wise, GW can have some fun with it at this point. If they are backed by the Custodes, maybe the Grey Knight's power armor for the Aegis armor doesn't have a backpack power plant either. Maybe it still looks like more traditional power armor, not quite as ornate as the Oramite armor of Custodes, but they could have some fun with it to further differentiate it from other power armor as well. just things to keep in mind for the fun of it. Anyways, thanks for sticking through it. Share your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. And until next time, take it easy.